So I really want to just dig into this. If you struggle with this area, hopefully you'll find it to be very helpful. So let's begin with some definitions, and I'm just going to give you different kind of definitions you can find on the internet that just begin to form an understanding of what exactly we're talking about here. So very basic definition: an unwanted thought, image, or impulse. Spontaneous in nature, often resisted, involuntary, unwelcomed. Intrusive thoughts seem to come out of nowhere. These thoughts and images are unwanted and often unpleasant. The content can sometimes be aggressive or sexual, or you could suddenly think about a mistake or a worry. An intrusive thought is an unwelcome, involuntary thought, image, or unpleasant idea that may become an obsession, is upsetting or distressing, and can feel difficult to manage or eliminate. The thoughts may become paralyzing, anxiety-provoking, or persistent. Intrusive thoughts may also be associated with episodic memory, unwanted worries. Intrusive thoughts, urges, and images are of inappropriate things at inappropriate times and generally have aggressive, sexual, or blasphemous themes. So, somebody said if a thought is bothersome, disturbing, and it's something you want to push out of your mind, it might be an intrusive thought. But the thought feels hard to control. I think it's important to say right up front is while intrusive thoughts may be disturbing, they aren't harmful. They're just thoughts. And they don't mean that you have a secret desire to do the things that pop into your mind. And I'm going to explore that a bit more later, but I just want to emphasize that up front. So some of the types of intrusive thoughts that people get. So some get them around germs, infections, or other kinds of contamination. So once they get that thought, they just can't shake it, and then it creates tons of anxiety. Others fear that you or your loved ones will get sick, hurt, or die. And again, you can see once you get that thought, tremendous anxiety. But others get these thoughts that create an impulse or just this thought of doing violent acts of aggression, hurting other people, stabbing people, murdering people, running them over with your car. All of those kind of intrusive thoughts that just happen. Or thoughts of harming yourself. Or thoughts of suicide that just pop into your head. Then some get doubts about doing a task wrong or leaving a task unfinished, and just that begins to paralyze them. Others around religious scruples, so that they might do something wrong that will displease God, that will cause them to go to hell, that will make them an immoral person. Others acting or doing or saying the wrong thing in public, and just the anxiety that causes. Or others of memories of something you really want to forget. Memories of something that's way in the past, but it just keeps coming into your mind and haunting you. Others, unwanted sexual thoughts, including thoughts of being sexually assaulted or of sexually assaulting somebody else. Or that gets turned into thoughts about sexually abusing a child. And those can be just very shame-creating intrusive thoughts. Or fear that you're going to do something dangerous or illegal and get yourself into trouble. Or worry that you forgot something important, like turning the oven off or turning the fireplace off, and that there could be something disastrous happen. So those are the categories of the types of thoughts that people get. What I want you to understand is that there's been many myths that have developed about intrusive thoughts, and one of the most distressing is that these thoughts mean that you subconsciously want to do them. So if the thought comes into your mind, it must mean you want to do it. And I want to say up front that that is simply not true. In fact, the opposite is true. The reason this causes so much distress for people is because they don't want to do it. They're fighting that because it's unacceptable, that it's at odds with who you are. So understand right up front that just because you get this thought does not mean that that's who you are, does not mean that something in you wants to do it. Rather, the opposite is true. You're so upset because that's not who you are and you don't want to do it. So somebody said this, and I think it's important to think about. The problem for people who have these thoughts is that unwanted intrusive thoughts feel so threatening. That is because anxious thinking takes over. So what he's pointing out is the issue now is not the thought, it's the anxiety piece around it. And the thought, as abhorrent as it might be, seems to take on a power of its own, a power it does not really have. People tend to try desperately and urgently to get rid of these thoughts, which paradoxically fuels their intensity. So by focusing on them, by struggling with them, you're actually making them stronger. The harder they try to suppress or distract or substitute thoughts, the stickier the thought becomes. So it's like anxiety fuels this whole process. What do you do about it? So let me begin with many of the intrusive thoughts come out of implicit memories, way from the past, stuff that's in your subconscious brain, stuff that you might not even have a memory of. What they're finding is the best way to access these memories is not top down through your cortex, but through therapeutic modalities that are bottom up, that help calm your brainstem and limbic brain and heal them. And then some of these memories get released to you. So that's mindfulness, breath work, yoga, biofeedback, somatic therapies, sensory-based interventions. All of those are bottom-up approaches that sometimes help begin to release memories that help you understand where some of these intrusive thoughts are coming from. But in the here and now, people who are bothered by intrusive thoughts, really it boils down to they need to learn a new relationship to their thoughts. They need to learn that sometimes the contents of thoughts carry weight. Sometimes they don't. They're totally irrelevant. They're not important. They don't need to be listened to. And so not all thoughts have equal weight. Not all thoughts need the same response. That's what we're wanting to learn. Second thing that people need to understand is sometimes we bring a thought to our mind. We initiate the process in our brain to think of something. But in many cases, we do not initiate thoughts coming into our brain. That's important to understand. Thoughts can just pop into our brain unbidden. We did not initiate anything. And so it's, again, realizing our brain has many parts. Each part is doing its job. Once in a while, some of those parts which are working subconsciously are going to release a thought to our conscious mind. And it could be in total disagreement with what we really believe and think. So don't get upset. The brain is just being the brain. It is just doing its job. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means there's parts of the brain that are processing differently from kind of who you are as a person. And over time, that can be healed. The next thing that is so important to understand is you can't control many of the thoughts that pop into your brain, but you can control what you do with them once they pop into your brain. And that basically means you can feed them or not feed them. You can give them weight or not give them weight. You can give them total attention, or you can ignore them. You can focus on them, or you can redirect your mind to something else. That's the part you control. You don't control whether or not a thought pops into your brain, but you control what you do with it. So many people have worked on this and pulled together a list of here's what you can do. So some have found it helpful to recognize and label the thoughts for what they are. Oh, that's an intrusive thought. I can't control that. That can be very helpful to put that label on it. Then you can just let them stay instead of trying to push them away. Accept that they will eventually pass. Give a bit of time for that to happen because they will fade away. And just keep doing what you're doing and not feed into it. And as you do that, it's just going to gradually pass away. That's going to be the process. And if you realize that process will happen, then that will help you not panic when the intrusive thought comes. Just, ignore it. Just keep doing what I'm doing. Think about something else, and they will just pass away. But be prepared that they're going to come back. That's just how the brain works. So don't get upset. Go, that thought's back. The brain is still working through stuff. The second thing is don't do these things. Don't engage with these thoughts. Don't give them weight. Don't try to question why you're having them. Don't look for meaning behind them. Don't try to stop them. Doing any of those things is fixating on the thoughts. It is feeding the thoughts. It is actually making it worse. Just, that's intrusive thought. Okay, let it pass. And it will just get less and less. Somebody said this, in reality, a thought, even a scary thought, is not an impulse. The problem is not one of impulse control. It is over control. They are at opposite ends of the continuum. However, sufferers get bluffed by their anxiety. So here's that anxiety piece again. And they become desperate for reassurance. So they get this thought. They think, is that an impulse or not? Is that an impulse or not? Well, the only way I can be sure of that is I must control this thought. There you just fed the thought. There you just made things worse. But their desire for reassurance that this is not them, that they're not going to act on an impulse, actually makes things worse. So reassurance only works temporarily. People can become reassurance junkies, and that's not a good thing. The only way to effectively deal with intrusive, obsessive thoughts is by reducing one's sensitivity to them, not by being reassured that it won't happen again or that it's not true. Unwanted intrusive thoughts are reinforced by getting entangled with them, worrying about them, struggling against them, trying to reason them away. They are also made stronger by trying to avoid them because that's partly fixating on them. Leave the thoughts alone. Treat them as if they're not even interesting, and they will eventually fade into the background. Let me end with a study that was done in 1970 by Walter Mischel at Stanford University. And so it was putting children, preschool children, in a room where a man would give them toys to play with for a while, and then the man would have 2 plates, one with 2 marshmallows on it, one with 1 marshmallow on it. And what the man said was that he was going to leave the room and for just a little while and leave the children with the 2 plates, the 2 marshmallows on one and the 1 marshmallow on the other. And what he said to them is if they could wait until he comes back, then he would let them have the plate with the 2 marshmallows. But if they just couldn't wait for the man to come back and really wanted the marshmallows, they could ring a bell and then they could have the plate, but it would be the plate with 1 marshmallow. And so that was the test that was done. And what they found, and it's just fascinating, is that the children who were able to wait until the man came back and got the 2 marshmallows, they tracked those children. They tracked the children that couldn't wait and ended up with the 1 marshmallow. And the children that were able to wait, they did better in adult life. They did better in getting careers. They get better in staying out of trouble with the law. And they're going, what was going on in that small child's mind that enabled them to wait and able to eventually get the 2 marshmallows? And what they found is that the children had some internal tool already, some internal mechanism that enabled them to not focus on the marshmallows, but to distract themselves and focus on something else. They were able to resist the temptation by not feeding it, by focusing on it. They were able to direct their minds to other things and become focused on those things. And that enabled them to enjoy those other activities and not get drawn into feeding the temptation. So somebody has put it this way. It's like you are riding on an elephant. You want the elephant to turn to the left, but the elephant wants to turn to the right. So now you have 2 powerful wills, each wanting to do the opposite. So how does a skilled rider get a powerful elephant to turn and do what the rider wants when it actually is wanting to do the opposite? Well, you don't enter into a contest of wills with an elephant. The elephant will always win. And so the point is this: you don't try to enter into a contest of wills with your subconscious mind, with your conscious mind trying to conquer your subconscious mind. You'll never win that fight. What they've found is the skilled rider, the skilled conscious mind, is able to distract the elephant, to get incentives and stimuli that cause the elephant to want to go in the other direction. And so what we have to do when these intrusive thoughts come is get our mind focused on healthy things, things that give us joy, things that feeds our soul, things that make us want to go in this healthy direction, and eventually our subconscious mind cooperates. So understand that your thoughts have no power over you. Your thoughts are thoughts. It's what you do with the thoughts, how much weight you give them, that determines the power that they have. So you can decide what to do with these thoughts, how much weight to give them. You can train your mind to respond to different stimuli, to focus on different things. It's going to take time. It might take help, but it is possible to do it. But underneath all of that, be working on the trauma that, if unresolved, had to create these thoughts to try to protect you. And as you heal your trauma, you will find that some of these thoughts will begin to just disappear on their own. Well, that's the end of another Friday night. I hope that is helpful for you. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.